my mom said. You don't have a stable job anyway. Just watch the kids for your brother. And before I could even respond, she left 3 little kids right on my doorstep. At that exact moment, I was on a cruise ship, sailing through warm Mexican waters. My phone started blowing up with calls and texts from her screaming, "Get back here and fix this right now." My name is Kylie. I'm 30 years old. I'm a freelance graphic designer and content creator. I run my own business, own my apartment, and honestly, I'm doing really well for myself. But in my family's eyes, none of that matters. Because I work from home and don't have a husband or kids, I'm the one with nothing going on. The one who's always available. The default babysitter every holiday. This year they took it way too far. They didn't ask. They didn't even consider my plans. They just decided my life could be paused so they could have their perfect holiday without the kids. What they didn't know was that this time, I wasn't going to pause for them. If you've ever been treated like the convenient one in your family, if you've ever been expected to drop everything for others while your own life is put on hold, you're going to want to hear how this played out. Hit that like button if you've ever been in my shoes. Comment below what you would have done. And subscribe with notifications on because this story gets wild. It all started 2 years ago on December 23rd. I remember the drive like it was yesterday. 3 hours through endless traffic to my mom's house in the suburbs. I had my overnight bag in the car, a few gifts in the trunk, and a vague hope that maybe this year things would be normal. The moment I walked in, that familiar smell of pine hit me. Cozy, warm, Christmassy. But it didn't last long. Mom looked up from the couch and said almost casually, "Kylie, you're here just in time. The tree is half done, and I could really use your help with the lights. They're all tangled again." And just like that, my holiday became work. I spent hours untangling strings of lights, testing bulbs that didn't work, carefully wrapping each one around the branches. Then came the ornaments. Glass balls, handmade ones from the kids' family heirlooms. I fluffed every branch, adjusted the star until it sat perfectly straight, and tried not to think about how little anyone noticed what I was doing. By the time I finished, the tree looked beautiful, sparkling in the living room window like it had stepped right out of a magazine. But there was no time to rest. Mom handed me rolls of wrapping paper and a pile of gifts that still needed to be wrapped. I sat on the floor for hours, cutting, folding, tying bows, my fingers sticky from tape, knees aching from the hard floor. And then, the food prep. I chopped vegetables, marinated the ham, laid out ingredients for the next day. All while Mom and the adults mostly sat on the couch, sipping wine, scrolling on their phones, chatting about work or old family memories. It wasn't exactly subtle. My role in the house was clear. I was the helper, the one who made everyone else's holiday easy, while my own life, my own time didn't matter at all. Then Preston and Lana arrived with the kids. Ava, who was 4, burst in with boundless energy. Ethan, too, toddled behind, grabbing everything he could reach. And Harper, only 8 months, clung to Lana, fussing already. Immediately I was on duty. Ava wanted every present opened right away, tearing wrapping paper into confetti. Ethan kept trying to put anything he could grab in his mouth. Harper needed constant soothing. I carried, cleaned, fed, distracted, and calmed for hours while the adults relaxed. Wine refills, laughter, cozy seating, they had everything. I had chaos, crumbs, and sticky hands. Lunch came, and I barely got a bite. I fed Ethan in his high chair while Ava ate at the little table, trying to keep everything safe. I grabbed scraps between wiping messes and picking up toys. The day blurred into a long, exhausting loop of meals, snacks, diaper changes, nap time negotiations, tantrums, and toys scattered everywhere. And then came the photo. Evening, everyone in cozy pajamas. The lights on the tree glowing perfectly. Mom clapped her hands, announcing, "Family photo time." Everyone rushed to get in position. Ava on Preston's shoulders, Lana next to Mom, smiles wide, arms linked. And me. I was still on the couch, cradling a sleeping Harper, trying not to disturb her. Not a single person called me over. Not once. Multiple photos were taken. Framing, flashing, laughter. And later the photo, perfectly staged, beautifully lit, was framed and hung above Mom's fireplace. The memory of that Christmas, captured forever. Except me. I wasn't in it. I didn't exist in their picture. And for the first time the hurt landed differently. It wasn't just tiredness from childcare or food prep. It was the sharp, undeniable realization that in their perfect, glowing image of the holiday, I simply didn't count. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a one-off. This was the pattern. Year after year I was expected to be the helper, the sitter, the quiet labor behind the scenes while everyone else basked in the perfection I created. And somehow I was supposed to smile about it. I ate my leftovers standing at the counter, cold and unappreciated, while their laughter floated from the living room. And I decided right there that this pattern had to end. But at the time I didn't know how. I just felt the weight, the unfairness, and the sharp sting of being invisible in my own family's story. By the time Preston and Lana arrived with the kids, the whole day had already spiraled into controlled chaos. Ava barreled through the door like a tiny whirlwind, squealing about Santa and presents, her little hands grabbing everything in sight. Ethan followed right behind, toddling unsteadily, sticking everything within reach into his mouth. And little Harper, only 8 months old, clung to Lana, fussing softly but refusing to be set down. And just like that I was full-time childcare. Mom gave a quick, satisfied nod, then settled onto the couch with a mug of hot cocoa. Kylie, you're a natural with the little ones. Can you watch them while we finish setting up? That's all it took. My role was assigned, unspoken but crystal clear. The adults were free to relax, and I got the long, unglamorous shift. From that moment, the day became a blur of feeding, soothing, and chaos management. I carried Ethan while Ava demanded immediate attention, piecing together the dollhouse she insisted we play with right then and there. I kept Harper close, rocking her until she calmed, all while scanning the room for hazards, the tiny toy blocks, the wrapping paper scraps, the runaway crayons. Lunch was another story. Barely ate. I fed Ethan in his high chair, Ava at the small table, juggling plates, cups, and utensils. Every few minutes, I wiped hands, cleaned up spills, and checked on Harper. Meanwhile, the adults sat at the dining table, wine in hand, enjoying a quiet meal while I grabbed bites between rounds of mini-crises. And it didn't stop. Snack time, nap time, diaper changes, bath prep, tantrums, tears, and more tears. I jumped at every little sound, a whimper, a cry, a bump, because someone had to. I built Lego towers, read the same story 3 times in a row, and chased toddlers away from anything fragile. By the time evening rolled around, I had aches in places I didn't know existed. Then came the moment I still can't shake, the family photo. The lights on the tree were on full glow, everyone in their cozy pajamas. Mom clapped her hands excitedly. "Family photo time," she announced, and everyone rushed into position. Ava on Preston's shoulders, Lana next to Mom, smiles wide, arms linked. They posed perfectly. And me. I was on the couch, cradling a sleeping Harper. I stayed put, not wanting to disturb her, thinking someone would call me over. No one did. Not once. Multiple photos clicked, smiles flashing, laughter ringing. Later, one was chosen, printed, and framed, perfectly displayed above Mom's fireplace. The thing is, that photo captured the perfect family Christmas. Except me. I wasn't in it. And in that moment, a familiar feeling hit differently. It wasn't just exhaustion. It wasn't just the long hours of untangling lights or wrapping gifts or feeding 3 small children while everyone else enjoyed themselves. It was the sharp, undeniable truth that, in their memory of this holiday, I didn't exist. My presence, my labor, my time, it all counted for nothing. I sat on that couch, holding Harper, the warm weight of her body contrasting the cold edge of reality settling in. I really realized, that this wasn't just a one-off. This was a pattern. Every year I was the convenient one, the invisible one who made everyone else's life easier, without acknowledgement, without gratitude, without pause. My work, my boundaries, my own joy, they didn't factor in. I ate my leftover lunch standing at the counter, cold and forgotten, while the adults laughed and shared stories in the next room. And something inside me shifted. I didn't know how I would fight it yet or what it would look like, but I knew I couldn't keep letting it happen. I couldn't keep being invisible. That night, as I collapsed into bed, exhausted but awake with a racing mind, I started to see the pattern clearly. My kindness had been weaponized, my generosity assumed, my time taken for granted. And the worst part, I had done it to myself for so long without realizing the cost. It was time for a change. Evening came, and the house was finally quiet. Well, as quiet as it could be with 3 kids who had been hyped up all day. The tree lights glowed warmly in the corner, ornaments twinkling, the whole room sparkling. Mom clapped her hands, voice bubbling with excitement. Family photo time. Everyone scrambled into position. Ava, beaming, climbed onto Preston's shoulders. Lana stood beside Mom, arms linked, smiles perfect. They arranged themselves like a holiday card come to life. And me. I stayed on the couch, Harper asleep in my arms, careful not to move and wake her. I figured someone would call me over. Eventually. No one did. Not a single glance. Not a "come on Kylie, join us." Just flashes, smiles, laughter. Multiple photos clicked, and the adults congratulated themselves on getting the perfect shot. I watched silently, cradling the sleeping baby, feeling more invisible than ever. Later, the chosen photo was printed, framed, and hung proudly above Mom's fireplace. A symbol of the perfect family Christmas. And yet there I was, not in it. The realization hit me hard, sharper than any exhaustion or frustration I'd felt all day. This wasn't just about a photo. It wasn't just about spending hours untangling lights, wrapping gifts, cooking meals, or managing 3 little whirlwinds. It was about acknowledgement, or, in this case, the total lack of it. My effort, my presence, my care. It all didn't matter. Not in their eyes. Not in this memory, which was now set in stone above the mantel for everyone to see. I remember holding Harper, feeling her little chest rise and fall against mine. Warm, soft, trusting, oblivious to the larger drama. And as I looked at the smiling group across the room, something inside me clicked. This pattern, the way I had always been the default family member, the invisible one, the person everyone assumed would just handle everything, wasn't fair. It had never been fair. I thought about the way I had spent my day. Untangling lights until my fingers ached. Wrapping gifts for hours on the floor, tape sticking to my fingers, knees sore from kneeling. Preparing food for the next day, cleaning up spills, soothing tantrums, rocking babies, chasing toddlers, mediating fights over toys. And then, at the end of it all, standing aside while the adults basked in the success of what I had made possible. And now this photo, proof if I needed it, that my contributions were invisible. My name, my effort, my very presence erased. It wasn't bitterness I felt exactly. It was a combination of shock, exhaustion, and the slow burn of realization. The sting of being overlooked, of being undervalued, of being treated as if my time, my energy, my care were just disposable. And this wasn't new. It was the culmination of years of doing things for family without recognition, of putting others first at the expense of myself, only to be ignored when it mattered most. I sat there for a long while, just breathing, rocking Harper gently, letting the silence stretch. For a moment, the world outside that living room didn't exist. I let the frustration, the hurt, and the recognition of my own invisibility wash over me. It was a hard, quiet clarity. I realized something crucial that night. This pattern wasn't going to change unless I did. If I kept allowing myself to be the invisible support, the default babysitter, the unpaid helper, I would always be left out of my own life. I would always be the one holding the baby while everyone else took the photo. And for the first time in a long time, I promised myself I wouldn't. I didn't know yet exactly how I'd change things, or what the next move would be. But something had shifted inside me. I was done letting my family assume, dictate, and erase my life and my time. That night, holding Harper, exhausted but alert, I realized my boundaries had to be non-negotiable. My presence wasn't a convenience for everyone else. It was a choice, and it had to be respected. Looking at that framed photo the next morning, I didn't feel envy. I didn't feel despair. I felt resolve. The realization settled in. My role in this family would never be invisible again. I wouldn't be erased. Not in a photo and not in my own life. A few weeks later, on a late November afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was deep in the middle of a project. I was sitting at my desk surrounded by dual monitors, layers stacked in Photoshop, a color palette open on one screen, a deadline looming for a high-stakes client. My heart sank just seeing Mom's name flash across the screen. I hesitated for a second before answering, then switched it to speaker so my hands could stay busy. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Kylie, there's my girl." Her tone was warm, almost sing-songy, the way she always sounded when she was about to drop some news she thought would excite me. "How's everything?" "Busy as always." We exchanged the usual small talk, weather, garden club updates, and the like. Then gently she eased into it. "So, I've been thinking about Christmas this year. Preston and Lana are completely worn out. With 3 kids under 7, they barely get a moment to breathe." I kept working, dragging a vector into place, nodding as she spoke. "Yeah, that's tough. 3 is no joke," I said. "That's why I had the perfect idea," she continued, almost breezily. "They deserve a real break. Just the adults. Nice dinners, maybe a little getaway nearby, without the chaos of toys and tantrums. And the kids can stay with you for a few days. Your place is spacious, central, perfect for them. You'd be the ideal host." I froze mid-movement. "Mom, I can't," I said carefully. "This project is massive. I'm booked solid through the holidays. Client deadlines aren't flexible." There was a soft pause. Then she leaned on her gentle, persuasive tone. "Oh, sweetie. I know you're working hard, but you're at home, right? It's not like you have to commute or punch a clock. The kids can entertain themselves while you're on your computer. Ava can color, Ethan has his tablets, Harper mostly naps. You'll barely notice." I rubbed my temple. "Mom, I can't split focus like that and deliver professional work. I can't pause a project this size for a babysitting marathon." She sighed in a way that sounded understanding. "Of course it's not a hobby. You're talented. We all know that. But think about your brother. He's carrying the family mortgage, daycare costs, health insurance for 5 people. Real pressure every day. Helping out would mean everything to them." I felt that familiar weight settling in, the guilt that had snuck in countless times before, dressed as concern for others. "Mom, my hours are flexible, but the work isn't optional. If I fall behind, I could lose the client." A quick "I get it" came from her, soft and soothing, almost convincing. But she pressed on. "Of course it's not a hobby. But the kids adore you. Ava talks about Aunt Kylie all the time. Don't you want that bond? It'll be special for everyone." Clenched my jaw. I did want to see them, but not at the expense of my business, my sanity, or my boundaries. "Maybe a day visit," I suggested. "Or I can come by your place. But I can't commit to several full days." Mom's voice stayed calm, almost disappointed. "They've been looking forward to adult time. I only suggested you because I knew you'd understand. Families step up for each other, right?" The words dripped with subtle implication. My life, my priorities, my work, they didn't matter. Only the convenience of everyone else. The conversation stretched. Each of my objections countered with gentle reasoning, emotional leverage, and carefully framed guilt. Finally, she wrapped it up. "Anyway, it's settled. I'll let Preston know the dates are good. The kids will be so excited. Love you. Talk soon, honey." Blick. The line went dead. My chest tightened. She hadn't asked. She hadn't listened. She had decided. And by telling Preston I was excited, she had stacked the deck against me. Refusing now would make me the villain. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, mind racing. Anger surged first, hot and sharp, but quickly helplessness followed. It was the same feeling from years ago, holding a sleeping baby, invisible, erased from a memory everyone else celebrated. Only now it was deliberate. I leaned back in my chair, coffee gone cold beside me, and let the reality sink in. She hadn't just asked. She had orchestrated, manipulated, and told everyone I agreed before I even had a chance to speak. The betrayal burned sharp, deep. I knew then I had to act. Not with anger, not with excuses, but with clarity and boundaries that couldn't be ignored. Because if I didn't, this pattern, this expectation that my life could pause for everyone else, would never end. A few hours after that call, I opened my email, partly to distract myself, partly because something inside told me I needed to see it. My heart sank before I even clicked the message from Mom. It wasn't addressed to me. It was the family group email. Preston Lana Extended Family. Subject line: Great news for Christmas. I hesitated, then opened it. My stomach dropped as I read. She'd written that I was so excited to have the kids stay with me for a few days, that I'd been telling her how much I missed them and wanted that special aunt time, and that my apartment was ideal and perfect for hosting. None of it was true. Not a word. She'd completely rewritten my refusal into eager volunteering. She didn't just plan without asking. She had broadcasted a lie that locked me in before I could even speak. I closed my eyes and felt that old familiar weight. Frustration, anger, and betrayal all swirling together. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't insulted me directly. But she'd dismissed my boundaries, my career, my priorities, and made me look like the selfish one to everyone else. I picked up my phone and called Marley. She's my closest friend, the one who cuts through nonsense without hesitation. I read the email word for word, my voice shaking at points. I could feel her silence on the line, then finally she said, "Kylie, this is textbook manipulation. Your mom isn't hearing your no. She's rewriting reality to make you the villain if you refuse." Her words hit hard but clear. She pointed out the tactics I'd experienced countless times before. My career devalued because I work from home. My refusal reframed as selfish. My brother's obligations inflated while mine were minimized. The children used as emotional leverage. And now the email acted as insurance, cementing my supposed agreement. Backing out would make me look unreliable, irresponsible, even cruel. Marley didn't stop there. She brought in the practical side. "Kylie, you've got to see this clearly. If the kids show up at your apartment, and you refuse or they're unattended even briefly, that's legally risky. Child services, police complaints, it's serious. You could end up scrambling to protect yourself while they're manipulating the story. Boundaries now aren't just emotional. They're protective." I sank back into my chair, staring at the screen, heart racing. All the anger, guilt, and helplessness from the original phone call combined with the cold, hard reality Marley laid out. I'd been caught between wanting to be kind and the manipulative trap my mom had set. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was intentional. For hours I sat there running through every scenario. Every compromise I could think of turned into surrender. Offering a day, adjusting hours, finding a babysitter. None of it would matter. Mom had already cast me as the willing hero, framed my refusal as villainy, and ensured my brother and the extended family were in on the story. Finally, exhaustion settled over me, but not the sleepy kind. It was that tense, simmering clarity you get right before a decision that matters. I realized something fundamental. If I wanted my life, my work, my time, and my sanity respected, I couldn't negotiate. I couldn't rationalize. I had to act decisively and unapologetically. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and let out a long, slow breath. The anger was still there, but it was sharper now, precise. Not aimless frustration. Not guilt. Just clear, quiet resolve. I wasn't about to let my life pause for everyone else's convenience. Not this time. That evening, as the city lights outside my window blinked on, I made a mental list. Work commitments, travel plans, security measures, and the strategy to reclaim control. For the first time in years, I felt that powerful mix of fear and exhilaration. The awareness that I could set boundaries and actually enforce them. I didn't have to shout. I didn't have to argue. I just had to be firm, clever, and prepared. And that's exactly what I was about to do. I spent the next few days quietly plotting. Not the impulsive, angry plotting you see in movies, but careful, methodical, the kind that feels almost like breathing once you finally commit. First, I booked the cruise. Olo. Mexico, Riviera route, warm sun, ocean views, no questions asked. I wanted a break, yes, but more than that, I wanted control. A window where I didn't have to answer to anyone, where my time was truly mine. Booking was a little nerve-wracking, honestly. Thousands of dollars I'd been saving for months, gone in a few clicks. But the excitement that followed, unstoppable. I pictured myself on deck, the wind in my hair, coffee in hand, reading without interruption, the ocean stretching endlessly. No guilt, no demands, no rewriting of reality. Just me. Then came the practical steps. I changed the locks on every door. No copies left in anyone's hands. I installed cameras, a full set, including a wide-view doorbell. Easy setup through an app, remote monitoring from anywhere. My plan wasn't about spying. It was about having eyes on my space and knowing the kids, or anyone else, wouldn't be left unattended. Safety first. Next, I cleared my work schedule. I pushed pending projects ahead, notified clients of brief unavailability, and set auto-replies explaining I'd be offline. For the first time in ages, I could truly focus on me without worry. I even prepared minimal texts to send to Mom. Neutral, polite, nothing that gave away the plan. All set here. Looking forward to the holidays. Emojis included. She bought it, of course. She always did when she thought she was winning. Packing felt surreal. My suitcase wasn't full of diapers, snacks, and toys. Instead, light clothes, sunscreen, novels, a few essentials. A cabin with a balcony, meals included, optional excursions. Everything designed to reinforce the contrast. The life I wanted versus the life my family assumed I'd offer. The night before I left, I double-checked everything. Locks. Changed. Cameras. Work. Cleared. Messages. I even rehearsed my calm responses in my head, in case Mom or Preston called while I was already on the cruise. Nothing would shake me. Not this time. When I finally boarded the ship, I felt a rush unlike anything else. Every step onto that deck was a step out of the trap my family had built. The sun hit my face, the warm breeze lifted my hair, and the waves stretched endlessly ahead. Could breathe again. No one rewriting my intentions. No one assuming my time was disposable. For the first time I was free to simply exist, fully and unapologetically. Of course, the alerts started immediately. The doorbell, motion sensors, texts, missed calls. I had set the cameras to notify me, but I didn't answer. My fingers hovered over the phone once or twice, curiosity flaring, then I shut it down. They were outside my apartment, standing there with the kids, expecting the convenient aunt to magically appear. I didn't move a muscle. The mix of vindication and sharp guilt prickled, but I reminded myself, boundaries aren't cruel, they're necessary. Watching through the cameras, I saw Mom fumble with the lock, Preston knocking and banging, Lana shivering with the baby, Ava and Ethan crying in confusion. Snow flurries starting, their frustration mounting, and the neighbor stepping out, voice booming, demanding they remove the children from the cold. Every detail unfolded exactly as it would in reality, but now I was just an observer, calm, detached. It was almost mesmerizing. They had assumed I would comply, assumed I'd be a passive part of their plans. Instead, I had orchestrated a gentle yet firm wake-up call. They faced the consequences of their assumptions, and I wasn't responsible for cleaning up the fallout. Not this time. That evening, with the sun setting over the ocean, I felt a quiet, deep satisfaction. Not the kind that comes from revenge, but the kind that comes from reclaiming your life. No shouting, no confrontation, no public drama. Just a controlled, intentional act of self-respect. I leaned against the balcony railing, coffee in hand, watching the waves. I smiled, a soft, private smile, knowing the next few days would belong entirely to me. My life, my rules, And for the first time in years I felt completely, unapologetically free. The morning of the planned drop-off started quietly on my end. The sun was just spilling gold over the deck of the ship, the waves glittering like glass. I sipped my coffee, scrolling lazily through messages, but I didn't open the alerts from my apartment cameras yet. Not yet. I wanted the moment to unfold on its own. Then the first alert hit. Motion detected at the front door. My heart skipped, not with fear but anticipation. I opened the feed and there they were. Mom, bundled in a heavy winter coat, tugging a suitcase, voice gentle but insistent. Preston behind her, red-faced, hauling duffels and diaper bags. Lana struggled with baby Harper, who was wailing against the cold. And Ava and Ethan, bright-eyed at first, quickly growing cold, shivering on the stoop, unsure why their aunt wasn't answering. Mom rang the doorbell over and over. Preston knocked hard, then tried the handle. Nothing. Locked as planned. The kids' confusion grew, turning into panic. Ethan stamped his feet and wailed. Ava hugged herself tightly, cheeks pink from the cold. Harper's cries pierced the quiet winter morning. Time stretched, each second heavier than the last. Mom tried the lock again, muttering excuses, calling my name louder. Preston paced, frustrated, his breath fogging in the icy air. Lana juggled baby and toddler, shivering herself. I watched it all unfold from my balcony, a strange mix of vindication and guilt prickling the edges of my chest. Then the neighbor came out. Mr. Newman, the curmudgeonly older man next door, robe flapping, voice booming across the snow-covered driveway. What on earth is going on? You can't leave kids standing out in the cold like this. Move them inside, or I'm calling the police. Mom froze, trying her charming smile. Oh, it's just a mix-up. She's expecting us. Technical issue with the door. Mr. Newman didn't even blink. Not buying it. Those kids are freezing. Move them now. The panic escalated. Lana shushed Harper, trying to shield her from the wind. Ava clung to her leg, tears streaking her face. Ethan, finally realizing something was wrong, joined in the crying chorus. Preston ran back to his truck to grab coffee or blankets, but the chaos had already set in. Snow flurries began swirling, the cold biting, the luggage scattered, the kids overwhelmed. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. They had assumed I would comply, assumed I would silently accept their plan without protest. But the consequences of their assumptions were now undeniable. Every knock, every cry, every frantic glance captured on my cameras, broadcast to me in real time, proof that boundaries weren't cruel, they were essential. Minutes dragged. Mom tried to rationalize, to insist, to coax. Preston barked frustrated instructions. Lana struggled to maintain composure for the kids. The neighbor threatened again. It was all unraveling fast. And I stayed quiet, sipping my coffee, feeling a strange serenity. I wasn't the villain here. They had orchestrated this, and now they were facing the fallout. Finally they retreated. Bags piled back into vehicles, parents managing crying children, snow crunching under hurried feet. I watched as the SUV pulled away, leaving the stoop empty, silent except for the whispering wind. The alerts continued for a while, missed calls and texts flooding in, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The lesson was clear, and it wasn't mine to deliver directly. The rest of the day I stayed on deck, watching the ocean, the sun warm on my face. I didn't check my messages until late afternoon, and by then the panic had passed. The family's perfect plan, the adult getaway they'd envisioned, had collapsed before it even began. And the kids. They had learned, in a harsh but real way, that plans have consequences when assumptions go unchallenged. I felt no malice, no satisfaction in their struggle. Just relief. Relief that finally, for the first time in years, I wasn't trapped. I wasn't being erased or taken for granted. Could breathe. Could exist. I could prioritize myself without guilt. That night, the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. I leaned against the balcony railing, letting the waves soothe me. My life, My schedule, my choices, my space was mine again. Boundaries had been drawn, and they held. And as the cruise sailed onward, I smiled softly, a quiet, victorious smile. For the first time I was free. After the chaos of the failed drop-off, I let the day pass quietly. I didn't check the notifications obsessively. I wanted to stay present, to savor the calm I'd earned. But as evening fell, I decided it was time to act. I opened the family group chat for the first time in days. Dozens of messages had stacked up, missed calls, texts, escalating in urgency and frustration. But I didn't scroll through them. Not yet. I had one move to make. I chose a single photo, taken that afternoon on the cruise deck. Me leaning against the railing, the endless blue of the Mexican waters behind me, light wind in my hair. No forced pose, no fake smile. Just a quiet, genuine smile that said everything words couldn't. I attached it and typed a simple caption. I told you I wouldn't be there. I'm living my own life. Then I hit send. And just like that, my message landed. The perfect holiday plan, the carefully orchestrated dinner reservations, the day trips without meltdowns, the evenings of quiet adult conversation, they all collapsed instantly. I didn't have to say more. My boundaries had spoken for me. The alerts on my phone continued to buzz. Missed calls, angry texts, desperate voicemails, but I ignored them. I didn't respond. I didn't explain. I simply observed from a distance as the consequences of their assumptions played out. Mom's voice messages, once warm and coaxing, now carried frustration and shock. Preston and Lana scrambled to regroup, realizing too late that their plans depended entirely on my compliance. They retreated to my mom's condo, where space was tight, hallways narrow, and bedrooms already full. 2 toddlers and a baby crammed into a small living area, luggage spilling onto every surface. Quick takeout meals replaced the fancy dinners they'd envisioned. Exhaustion and tension replaced holiday cheer. Arguments flared. Preston blaming Mom, Lana frustrated and overwhelmed, Mom circling back to defend her original plan while placing the blame squarely on me. And the kids. They were confused, cold, upset. Their cries echoed through my camera feeds, each one a sharp reminder of the stakes. I felt a twinge of sympathy, yes, but no guilt. This wasn't cruelty. This was the natural consequence of assumptions, manipulation, and the repeated erasure of my time and boundaries. Over the next few days, I watched as the tension persisted. The family's carefully crafted holiday had fallen apart. Meals were chaotic, sleep was scarce, and tempers frayed faster with each passing hour. Mom tried to mediate, Preston tried to manage logistics, Lana tried to soothe the kids, but it was too little, too late. The fallout was real, tangible, unavoidable. And I stayed away. I didn't comment, I didn't intervene. I didn't let guilt pull me back into the chaos. My cruise continued. Sun-soaked mornings, quiet afternoons reading by the pool, peaceful evenings enjoying the ship's shows. Each sunrise over the water reinforced the shift. My life, my rules, my boundaries. No one could overwrite them. No one could manipulate me into being the default caretaker or the invisible family member ever again. Weeks later, I heard the indirect fallout. Aunt Helen, ever plugged into the neighborhood grapevine, passed along snippets of what had happened. Whispered confusion among friends, people talking about the family scramble, and quietly, judgment for the lack of preparation. Invitations I might have expected didn't come. My mom's usual events went on without me. Even Preston and Lana's temporary separation was a direct result of the stress and mismanagement they'd underestimated. I didn't gloat. I didn't relish in their discomfort. I simply noticed it and let it settle. My choice had consequences, but the most important consequence was mine alone. Peace, control, and the knowledge that for the first time in years, my life belonged to me. Looking back at the old framed Christmas photo on social media, the one where I'd been invisible, I finally understood. I wasn't missing. I'd always been there, just in the wrong frame. Now I was in the center of my own picture with clear edges, bright light, and the freedom to exist exactly as I chose. Boundaries weren't selfish. Standing up for myself wasn't cruelty. It was survival, it was respect, and it was finally, unequivocally mine. When the cruise ended, and I finally drove back to my apartment, the feeling was different this time. The city streets, the familiar skyline, even the winter chill, it all felt lighter. Somehow, the world had shifted while I'd been away. I parked in my garage, unpacked slowly, letting the memories of sun, sea, and quiet wash over me. My apartment looked the same, but I felt it differently. This space, this life was mine entirely and completely. The phone stayed quiet. No calls from Mom. No texts from Preston. The family group chat was silent. And for the first time in years, that silence felt like freedom, not guilt. I didn't rush to check messages or answer voicemails. I allowed myself to breathe, to settle, to exist without obligations I hadn't agreed to. A few weeks later, I heard fragments of what had happened through Aunt Helen. She was careful, neutral, never taking sides. "Things are tense," she said, voice calm. "People are realizing consequences only hit when assumptions meet reality." She laughed softly, but there was no mockery. Preston and Lana were temporarily separated. Stress and exhaustion had fractured their routines. Mom, well, she was quieter, more measured. Invitations I'd normally have received were quietly rerouted. Life continued, but the ripple from my boundary setting was unmistakable. And honestly, I didn't feel guilty. I took my time returning fully to normal life. Work flowed differently now, uninterrupted. Projects I had feared missing were completed ahead of schedule. The pressure to please everyone, to be the family's default, invisible caretaker, had lifted. It was almost surreal, how much space had opened up when I stopped accommodating expectations that weren't mine. I even found myself reflecting on that old Christmas photo, the one where I'd been erased. For years it haunted me. But now, with my apartment quiet and my boundaries firm, it no longer stung. I could look at it and see the contrast. Back then, I'd been the one bending, sacrificing, invisible. Now I was present in my own life. I was in the center of my own frame. No corners. No supporting role. Just me, fully, unapologetically. The lesson settled deep. Boundaries aren't selfish. Saying no doesn't make you cruel or unloving. Protecting your time and energy doesn't diminish your care for others. It just makes your care sustainable. Self-respect, I realized, wasn't about proving my worth through sacrifice. It was about choosing when, how, and why I gave. Months passed. Holidays approached again, but this time there was no dread. I made plans on my terms. I visited friends, traveled, worked on projects I loved. My phone rang less with guilt-driven requests, more with genuine connections. Even when family tried to push, I was firm. The pattern that had defined my life for decades, subtle manipulation, silent expectation, quiet erasure, had been broken. And it felt good. It felt like breathing for the first time after being underwater for years. Sometimes I catch glimpses of how things are back home, through Aunt Helen, through mutual friends, but I don't involve myself. The stress, the arguments, the constant pressure to perform as the selfless one, they're their problem now. Preston and Lana are learning, slowly, what it means when others set limits. Mom is quieter, more respectful, though I know the old patterns linger. That's fine. My peace doesn't depend on changing them. For the first time, I'm in my own life. My apartment, my work, my choices, all untouched by expectation I didn't consent to. And that, more than anything, feels like success. Not in money or status, but in freedom. In space to breathe, to create, to live fully on my own terms. I keep that photo from the cruise on my phone sometimes, just as a reminder. I can stand firm. I can be unapologetic. I can protect my space, my energy, my life. No one gets to rewrite my story or assume my availability just because it's convenient. Not Mom. Not Preston. Not anyone. And for the first time, I truly believe it.